Hello, everyone, and welcome to another of our live conversations at Let's Talk Leadership. You'll see there's a gallery of friends who've joined us for this last conversation before Christmas. They're all sort of either waving at you or sticking their tongue out or doing something else. But anyway, Geneva, it's lovely to see you. Marcus, great to see you. Tim, thanks for joining us again. And it's lovely to see you. And represented around the room, we've got Brussels, we've got Spain, we've got Germany, we've got a Dutch person pretending to be British, we've got British people trying to be British, we've got Brexit in the background, we've got COVID, we've got absolutely everything hitting us at the moment. So we thought we'd spend this last session before Christmas just sort of sharing some recollections of 2020 and some of the sort of learnings we've had about leadership, and then perhaps spend a little bit of time looking forward to 2021. And as usual, just join in on the chat line on YouTube. Richard, our producer, is monitoring the chat, so if you've got any questions, anything you want to challenge us about, then go for it, and we'd love to have you join us. If not, this will be out on YouTube as soon as we've finished. So anyway, how are we going to start this, team? Who'd like to kick off with their first sort of thoughts about 2020 for them, what they've learned, either about themselves or about leadership?
Can I start, Matthew?
Oh, far away, yeah.
So I think my lesson for 2020 is careful what you wish for. That would be my advice to anybody, because at the beginning of this year, I said to myself, I'd like to travel less and do more online work.
Did you?
I did. So it's all my fault, and I'm so sorry, because, and just to keep you all, okay, next year, in the beginning of next year, I'm going to say I'd like to travel more and work from home less. If I can make a difference. But no, it's but no, seriously, careful what you wish for. Sometimes it comes true. That's my lesson, Matthew, from the beginning of this year.
Great. And anything leadership wise that that struck you during the year?
I think it has to be around trust. That's my trust and the willingness of people to take accountability for their situation. We talk a lot about people not being a victim of circumstances, and I think I've seen tremendous resiliency and strength in people, and the more you trust people to do what they need to do and make things work with the type of work that we do, it's essential. And we are looking forward to a much more, I guess, social 2021. But until then, having that trust and relying on people to do their job, to be accountable and vulnerable at the same time. But yeah, trust. It's all about trust for me.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for sharing that, Ian. So how about one of the rest of the gang?
To me, it has very much been about connection.
Yeah.
And which I guess is related to trust, but the way in which people have realized that, as if we didn't know, right? But that we cannot do things on our own. And I guess the leadership element of that is that leadership is shared, and you can't take decisions, you can't lead well, you can't do basically almost anything without other people, their consent, their trust, and the willingness to collaborate. The other thing I've learned is to see humor in even when the most of the news this year has been gruesome, but some of the headlines still make me laugh. A headline I saw this morning was EU leaders self-isolate after meeting Macron. Now, a year ago, you wouldn't have understood that. And now you do. But it's still kind of funny, even though it's, serious. Yeah. So funny and the serious at the same time.
Oh, great.
So can I inject a serious note, a philosophical note here?
Please do, Tim.
Because the word for me for this year is catalyst, which obviously means something that speeds something else up. And I had a discussion the other day with someone about how sometimes history, looking back, so to speak, speeds up at certain points. So obviously 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, the Iron Curtain as well, that's a time when things really, really speeded up and a tremendous amount happened in a few weeks. And I think we've seen the same here in a completely different way, in a different arena, in the sense that, I mean, obviously working from home has not just become working from home, it's become the idea of working from anywhere. Yeah. Which means that long-term people may be working from anywhere in the world. I mean, it could be the cliche of a Caribbean island or something like that, whatever it happens to be. And the things that have been building for a long time have been rushed forward, not really in a year, it's in a matter of weeks that things have happened. So just one business example that's really interesting is Lufthansa started decommissioning their aircraft after about 4 weeks of the real beginning of the pandemic, when lockdown was starting in, well, Italy, and then it came a bit later in Germany as well. So that's really what I mean. When I hear 2020, I'm going to think of how things speeded up. Some things absolutely for the better, but probably not everything for the better, at least initially.
That's so interesting. I agree with you, Tim, in terms of that speed. And what I was just stunned, I just physically moved by the speed of virtual connections, and that our connections are important. But in terms of, I think especially about Black Lives Matter and what happened in the United States, the speed with which information was shared was just staggering, and how much I hope progress can be made even in, let's say, a virtual world. I mean, we've seen examples of that over and over and over again. And the first image that comes to my mind is also Arab Spring, right? So much of the Arab Spring and that leadership was instigated, or the catalyst for that was also virtual movement. So I appreciate a lot of what happened because of the virtuality that exists in our world now.
So I'm thinking, actually, in a way, I agree with everything, but also in some ways, I think speed hasn't been fast enough for some things. For example, I work a lot with the health service, the NHS in the UK, and we're back potentially on a number of health conditions to where we were 18 years ago with waiting lists. So, you know, there is not enough speed. In fact, I think sometimes people were too scared and didn't take enough action to speed things up to ensure that we could run services in parallel. That's terribly important. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. And I do think, you know, in leadership, what I've tried to do with the people that I'm coaching and developing is get them to really reflect on the things that have been highs and lows for them this year and what the learning is. And I have noticed that people are in many ways busier, but they seem to find it easier also to take time out. So just that same old humbug, that same old thing that we always urge people to do on our courses is, you know, do stop and reflect and think about what's been really good learning for you this year, and what is it that you want to let go of that you couldn't let go of before lockdown, and what's something that you have taken up that you want to continue, even though there might be pressure on you not to. I think that's really, really, so that we can make it a positive experience, because it has been in so many ways. So life, it hasn't affirmed life in many ways, it's detracted from it. So what we can learn, I think, is really important from it.
Very interesting for me. It's answering that question is, I would like to rescue attitude in leadership. I come from a country that we are addicted to drama. So life happens, and then we make a big thing of what happens. And then one of the things that I'm observing in myself and in other people is that I am responsible of where I place my attention. And my attention is followed by my energy. So where I look is where I go. So very often when I work with some senior executives is, you are responsible to where you place your attention. And that, the importance of that is that along with that, it will be your energy, and that energy will color your attitude. And that will dictate the way you respond to what has happened. So it's been a very interesting, because I have also observed that in myself, is, well, it's not what happens that matters, it's how am I going to respond to what happened that is going to really matter. What is going to be my response to this? Am I going to go to drama? Am I going to go to victim? Am I going to be whinging, moaning, complaining? Am I going to accuse Trump? Am I going to accuse the Pope? I mean, I'm going to blame the rest of the world. Am I going to be rationalizing? Am I going to be ignoring the whole thing? What is going to be my response? And in that response, there's our freedom, because I get to choose my response. So that for me has been my aha moment, because I have been aware that, like Ian, I love traveling, but I got very much into automatic mode. I got myself into repetition, automatic, reacting more than responding. So for me, this holiday, and I want to be very respectful with the situation, but for me, it's been time for reflection and say, how am I running my own life? How am I responding to my life right now? And I found myself reacting more than responding. So it's been a very insightful year for me to regain my empowerment, and also to learn how to give space to other people. I had been very much into the go, 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 get the work done, da, 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 performance, 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 that I damaged relationships. I said, my God, why am I doing this? I mean, I'm not like that. Why am I putting people under so much pressure? I mean, so I am not responding. I'm reacting and inflicting pain when pain is not necessary. So it's been a very, very rich reflection time for me. And it's actually, I think it's helped me be a better person more than being a better leader. So I think that would be my 2 cents.
Like it.
Well,
Yeah.
two things I've been reflecting on. One is right at the end of Charlie Mackes's book, the little drawing which appeared on the BBC the other day, which has, you know, I think the words are kindness sits gently behind everything. And I've seen incredible acts of kindness in the last 12 months, from just about everyone, every aspect of society. You turn on the radio, you turn on the TV, and there are just the most wonderful, wonderful things that people are doing, all of which actually are leadership, because whether it's Marcus Rashford saying, we've got to do something about school, you know, feeding children who haven't got food, or there was a young woman the other night who'd started off an idea about just providing some Christmas hampers for 1 or 2 local people in the area. And she and her team are now delivering 500 Christmas hampers. She's having to get more volunteers in to help. And I mean, those sort of stories are replicated, and I'm sure they are across Europe, they're across the world, but certainly replicated in the UK. So that picture of the boy, the mole, and the fox sitting on top of the horse's back, looking at the countryside, and those words, sort of something that I would not have even thought about, probably. I don't mean not thought about kindness, but not thought about in that way. And the other thing is actually something, I went to see my 95-year-old mother on Thursday, yesterday, and asked her how she was. And she said, oh, I'm bearing up. And she'd had the sad news that she wasn't going to be able to go anywhere this year for Christmas, because for obvious reasons, we didn't want to put her at risk. But my younger sister had said she would go and spend a couple of hours with her on Christmas Day and take a Christmas lunch. And I said to Mum, well, you know, are you upset? You know, you look a bit down. She said, no. She said, I've had 94 lovely Christmases with lots of people. I can put up with one Christmas on my own. And she has said on several occasions, because she was asked by a national newspaper to make a comment on COVID, and she said, I don't understand this business about people rushing to supermarkets and buying food as if there's going to be nothing. You know, in 1939, right through to 1953, there was rationing in the United Kingdom. I mean, I was born in 53, even I had a rationing book. She said, you know, it lasted for 13 years, not 6 months.
Yeah.
People need to get a perspective. But she said it in a very sort of positive way. And I think that's the other thing that struck me, that in all of this, people who've been able to keep a very positive perspective on this, that it will pass, there will be something, whatever it is, we won't know. You know, Bob Johansson's clarity, not certainty. We don't know what it is, but we know it will pass. Those two things, the kindness and this is just a passing moment, I think are two things that have helped me this year. And I don't know, I just sense that that's everything that we've said in our different ways is what's getting us through this.
Well, if I may interject there, thank you for sharing that, Matthew. My mother, she's got cancer and she's 85. And I just want to share with you a very meaningful moment for me this year, where I went to visit her, and we were both in the street, open space, both wearing our masks. And I just wanted to express my loving to her. So I stopped by and bought her some flowers.
Yeah.
And I went up to her in the middle of the street and I gave her this bouquet of flowers. And my mother turned to me and said, "Why?" And I said, "Why not?" And the thing that really moved me was that she removed her face mask and she said something that even today really touches me. She said, "I would not let a virus or anybody express the loving that I've got for you." And she hugged me in the middle of the street. Now, the fascinating thing, it was not only the expression of the loving and the connection and the human connection, that social distance may be having an effect on people forgetting how important it is to bond with other people and connect with other people, is the fact that people who were walking by, I can see two groups of people. Those who were judging me and saying, "You're breaking the rules and you're putting your mother at risk," and da-da-da-da-da. I can hear the voices inside my head. And those who were touched by the expression of a human connection in the middle of the street, which takes me back to, I get to choose my attitude and I get to choose what's relevant and important. And as my mother said, I wouldn't let anybody at this point, in this precise moment, to just express the humanness of who we are. So, I just wanted to share that. It just listening to you, Matthew, really moved me to share this very special moment that I would treasure with my mother in the middle of the street. She just let go of her fears and she said, "I just want love, be present, and I just want to express that." And how often we push that aside. And I think life is giving us a challenge to put things first.
And we had Michael West, because Anne had two conversations with him. We had Michael West on Let's Talk Leadership talking about compassionate leadership. And I then asked him if he would do an hour and a half for a client that I was working with. And he said yes. And what struck me was, having heard him talk about compassion, I thought, yeah, I get it. But what he did when he was talking to the client was that he produced data, hard scientific research data, that showed the positive impact of being compassionate on people. And he even put sort of dollar signs and euro signs against it, based on research that had been done in Canada, in the States, and in Europe. And there was some, the people listening to it were really moved by the fact that actually showing compassion in the right way could have not just a benefit on individuals who were in a difficult moment, but people working in organizations, people doing tough work, remarkable difference. And he showed a lovely picture of a lady who was about to die. She was dying from cancer. She was an elderly lady. And she'd been in the hospital in the north of England. And I think the story was that the nurses had said, "Is there anything we can do for you? Because we and we know that you're near to death." And she said she'd like to see Bronwyn. And so they rang the family and said, "Your mother or your aunt or whoever it was has been asking to see Bronwyn. Is it possible for Bronwyn to come to the hospital?" And the family said, "But Bronwyn's a horse. So it could be difficult." But the nurses said, "No, it's not difficult. You get Bronwyn to the car park, outside the hospital, and we'll get the patient into the car park." And the picture he showed on the screen was Bronwyn kissing the face of presumably her owner, or this elderly woman that she knew. So the horse and the woman, with the nurses on one side and the family on the other. And he said the message he wanted to put, apart from the fact we were all in tears, literally all in tears, was that the nurses hadn't broken any rules, they'd just shown compassion. They hadn't broken any health protocols. They hadn't broken any guidelines. They just thought in a different way about how could they bring about a situation where the woman could meet the horse. The woman died about 4 or 5 hours later, he said. It just struck me that one of the things that's also happening this year is people are finding ways of doing things that they wouldn't have thought possible. And I just wonder sometimes whether the leaders we work with actually are getting in the way of that, or what are they doing to encourage it? because that picture and the data that he showed was you could just see people, you know, on the screen, all of them absolutely riveted. And some of the data was stunningly important. And just a simple word like compassion. So, you know, what you've been saying, Marcus, just showing compassion. Yeah, it's my attitude. I'm going to do it. Let's do it. See what happens. We don't have to break the rules. Let's just do it differently.
Great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a great picture. I'll send it to you. It's a lovely picture.
I think that's really important, isn't it? That sort of continue to show compassion. And one of the things I think that we might be looking at with our leaders next year is how they do start to reconnect with people, because I think many people have found it incredibly difficult working from home. You know, unbelievably difficult in terms of, you know, managing children, doing their education, balancing budgets, all of these sort of things, incredibly hard, and just working, having serious conversations when you haven't really got the space to work. So I think it's very challenging, but also there's a very big group of people, and we tried this at one client. You know, what are you going to do next year? How many days do you want to come in? Do you want to be close to people, or do you like the balance now? And there's quite a big group of people who said, actually, I like it the way it is, and I don't want to go in, and I don't want to be closer to people. It's actually, I'm more productive now, and I save time from traveling. So all of these things are true, aren't they? But there's a cost to everything. So I think it is really important that we support people in making sure that they are still connecting with people. And I hope that many people decide when it's safe to go back and have at least 1 day or 2 days back in the office, because I think that you lose out on a level of dialogue, I think, and connection that leads to empathy. And you need empathy in order to be able to show compassion to people. And personally, I think you get that much more when you're in a one-to-one relationship with somebody. I don't think Marcus could have had that exchange in quite the same way with his mother if they'd been on Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's really important that we help people get back together and connect in those ways again.
Well, we can give it a go, Anne. So here's a hug. Let me hug you. So even it's virtual, we can still hug and we can still express our affection. So I would extend my affection to all of in this call. And I would add self-compassion. I see a lot of people putting on themselves a lot of responsibility. So maybe there's a space for self-compassion. I think everybody's trying to do the best they can with what they know. And sometimes we are very harsh on ourselves. So I just want to introduce that angle of a little bit of slack and be self-compassionate with ourselves as well.
And is there a danger, Anne, that building on what you were just saying around what we would look for leadership in 2021, as the pendulum swings back potentially, and we're able to get more of a balanced approach to the way that we lead and the way that we live, that many of us may fall into the trap of saying, right, we need to look at our working from home policy now. And then other people might say, no, we need to rip it up and throw it away. You don't need a policy for that. You just have to trust your people and show compassion for yourself, for each other, and allow them to do what's right and trust them with the health and the well-being of the business, that they're mature enough to manage it for themselves. But there is a risk, isn't there, that we'll fall into the trap of, let's rewrite the policies. That's what we need to do.
I think it's really important. And for us, maybe one of the great lessons that we've had from this year, whether it's Black Lives Matter or all of the experiences that people have had, is, the difference is really important. And that's just a practical example, isn't it? People can be productive and connect and have great relationships and great outputs working from home or working in office, and the reverse. So I think it is really important to find ways of working that suit different people and not think, it challenge our own mental models. There's some leaders who are saying, I have to have this, they have to be in 2 days a week, because for me, that's the only way they're going to connect. Well, that is what she feels, but it's not a truth, is it? It's one truth. It's one way of thinking about things. But it's like everything, isn't it? It is actually difficult to keep everybody happy and do what's right as a leader, isn't it? I think it's really—
That's the great thing about a policy. At least everybody's unhappy with it. That's the way it works.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and building on that, I shared with a couple of you on the call a really interesting conversation I had with a learning and development manager who basically said that until the summer, the working from home, the working from anywhere was generating all the results that she'd been trying to get the company to, well, perform, basically, for ages and ages. In other words, it was a much more collaborative culture. There was much more compassion. There was less personal connection, of course, in the physical sense, but there was lots of connection via Zoom, using breakout rooms in the right way, that kind of thing. But what's happened in the last couple of months, she shared, was that there's been a slip back to how things were before. In other words, a bit of a colder, more directed, more command and control culture, which I think is quite interesting. So there is certainly a role for not assuming that everything has now reached some sort of new status that we just have to make the best of, or realize that it's perhaps a very positive development, but that you've got to sort of constantly keep managing that tension, if you like, between the drift back to all those things we've been trying to avoid, get people to avoid doing, the command and control idea, and obviously something more interdependent, as we talked about before.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of that model. I was going to say it's shift, but it's not, is it? The let go to let come model, you know, the U curve.
Otto Scharmer.
Scharmer, sorry, yeah.
Scharmer, yeah.
Fabulous, isn't it? It's so graphic, isn't it, about how, you know, you have to, in your mind, in your soul, with your hands, head, heart and hands, you have to let go of things, whether it's your beliefs or your attachment to ways of doing things that you like to see in yourself, perhaps, or in other people, in order to let come a new way of being. And I think that's so powerful, really. And, you know, with what you're saying, Tim, I think one of the things that we've probably dug our heels in, all of us, this year, but also, you know, many people, me included, have let go of some things that were very dear to me. And most of the time being fine about it, sometimes just thought, oh, this doesn't feel very comfortable. Can I go back to that? And I think, you know, we will go back to some things, but keep thinking, let go to let come. What can we embrace almost that's new? It's probably a bit corny, isn't it? I don't want it to sound corny. I just genuinely think it's almost like there's only a certain amount of space in our lives and in connection with other people. So if you want to do something different, you might have to let go of something in order to make space for something new.
That's trapeze. It's like a trapeze act, isn't it? You have to let go of one side to grab the other one, but we don't know what the other one looks like, so we're less inclined to let go of the first one. And it's that kind of flying through the air, not knowing what's going to happen next. And I think that's scary for most of us, me certainly included.
Otherwise, we might tiptoe along the wire a little way and then jump off because it's unsteady and go back to the beginning. I think, exactly. You know, and that's fine in some situations, isn't it, to step off and go back to the beginning. But sometimes you just need to keep going, and someone say to you, you know, what do you want and how can I help you? What do you do? What support do you need?
Britt and I were going to have a conversation at some point. We haven't sorted it out yet, about how annoying it is when people call these sort of things soft skills. It's a sort of bête noire of all of us. But you know, listening to what you've all been saying, I mean, we're actually expressing things that are very deep and fundamental and aren't easy to deal with, to resolve, to even get clarity around. And I think it does show how, I think, particularly the pandemic, but other things have happened, but it does show just how important all of these, you know, what do we let go of, what do we keep, how do we treat people, what do we say, how do we connect in different ways, how incredibly important it is. And it's not soft, it's bloody difficult most of the time, both for us personally and also for people that we're trying to connect with or we're leading. You know, we've had lovely examples over the last 12 months on the conversations we've had of people of all ages doing really quite remarkable things. And nearly every time when when they've been speaking, it's not been a hard skill they've been talking about. It's not been strategizing, a word I hate, or planning, or spreadsheet analysis. It's all been about relationship stuff, communicating with people, reaching out to people, dealing with different stakeholders and finding out what they want.
Absolutely. And there hasn't been a single person in all of the conversations that we've been fortunate to have who has said along the lines of during the conversation, who has said, actually, as a leader, you just need to be tough. And sometimes you just need to ignore people. And sometimes you just, you might hurt others, but hey, that is in favor of the company and you need to address the bottom line. And so sometimes people don't count. We've had none of that in any of our conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what do we think about 2021 then? So let's just for a moment assume that with vaccination and scientific research advancing all fronts and new ways of, with all the hard work that doctors and nurses and carers have put in over the last 12 months, that we find ways of managing this. What do you think of the, looking forward are the sort of leadership challenges we might be talking about this time next year?
Can I make a wish, Matthew?
Yeah.
Next year, kind of relate.
Careful.
No, this is you'll like this one, Britt. Yeah. What if, I wish that we trusted our younger leaders to look after us next year. How would that be?
Yeah.
Had some great wisdom, some incredibly experienced and wise, through the generations of people we've spoken to. But some of those people that have inspired me the most have been those younger leaders that we've been helping, some that we've been coaching.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great to put the big decisions in those people's hands for next year? See how we can manage our way and lead our way through some of these real challenging phases, as we come out into a different world. That would be something that I would be willing to do.
Yeah,
I think that, and to help as well. So reverse mentoring, all those things that we know work incredibly well. How can we make that work? That would be cool. Risky at the same time. It'll be colourful, but why not?
But interesting. When I don't know whether you noticed on LinkedIn, but I'm trying to remember his name. Oh, it has been Steve or Stefan, challenged a comment I made about, we were Let's Talk Leadership was focusing on young leaders, and he asked the question, but why? surely all leaders need this stuff. And when I responded and said, well, it's because young leaders have it so tough, he said he came back quite a great challenge and said, that's the very reason that leaders at the top of the tree need all of this stuff, because unless we can encourage them to give space to younger people to try things, make mistakes, challenge the thinking, whatever we do is still going to be hidebound. And it was interesting. I'm looking at Britt, the Dutch young leader who I think she was on the second conversation.
Yeah.
And she made the comment about if in a positive way that we changed our behaviors so enormously due to the pandemic. Wouldn't it be great if we could change our behaviors as far as the environment is concerned in the same way? Does it take an apocalypse of some awful environmental disaster to make everyone suddenly move that much more quickly? And I thought, imagine that young woman sitting on the board of a company and challenging the thinking. And how many times, I can't count them, the numbers of times you go on websites of client companies and grey men are staring at you in suits, and you think, yep, they're bright, they're clever, they got there probably by a lot of hard work, they're probably great people, but where is the youth? Where is the challenge of the ideas? And I sort of groan sometimes privately. But it's probably the last time I'm going to work for any of them, because they'll see this and say, never again, don't live anywhere near us. I'm probably grey and old myself. But it's just, I just find it fascinating that there's lots and lots of fantastic people out there.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point, Matthew. And I guess I feel inspired by what we've seen, or certainly what I've experienced through social activism, and how social activists are up against so much structural obstacles for their livelihood and their messaging. And they are in, I'm generalizing, but they're in these constricted formulas for existence regardless of a pandemic. And the social activism that we see that has taken hold and kind of almost intercepted so much of what's going on in the private sector, like this great intercept of that football. And now there's this, it's almost like it's a reverse pollination. So when I think about, for example, what I want to carry with me is the ability to tell a client or to invite a client that we don't have to meet face to face. No matter how desperate I am to have that, I would like to not travel as much for the environment. And I feel like if I make a little stand in my own values next year, I want to try to be not seduced by amazing trips to different places, and maybe insist in a small way about how we can manage virtually, and the social activism that I've seen that has enhanced the planet, right? Global social activism. I think that we can learn a lot from that. I take your point on as a desired behavior for myself.
Yeah, and building on that, I think one of the areas that we'd probably all love to see leadership and team development move into is really in the area of politics. Because I think if any of us are looking for, have we got examples of really bad leadership? A lot of them are going to be political examples. They're not going to be young leaders. They're not going to be social activists. They're not necessarily going to be people that we're working with or coaching, whatever. It's often in the world of politics. And perhaps that's, I wouldn't say the great unexplored for us leadership development professionals, because I'm sure there are politicians who work with coaches and so on and so forth. But we could see a lot of better leadership with politicians all over the world, I think. And I'm not going to open any Pandora's box of anything that's going on currently, but that is really my wish. And I know it's a very, very big wish, but to see, just let me say more compassion, maybe. Let's just recycle that word, because we see a great deal of division driven by people who have political power.
Yeah, and ultimately there needs to be a shift from all these wonderful young people, young leaders, who are leaders sometimes without knowing it, to getting them some form of power and decision status, so that actual large-scale change may start to happen.
Yeah,
and then you're into politics immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I keep coming back to Bob Johansson's comment about clarity, not certainty. I don't know why. There are two or three. It's like Laura Liswood's dominant, non-dominant keeps bouncing through my head every time I see anyone say anything. I think, oh, are they the dominant group talking here, or are they the non-dominant? You know, what's their perspective? But this clarity thing, I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, I almost couldn't listen to the news every night on the BBC, because there were business leader after business leader, politician after politician, all saying, we want certainty, you know, we want people, we want to be told what's going to happen. And I almost hit the screen and said, anyone who's stupid enough to offer you certainty shouldn't be on the television to start with, and certainly shouldn't be in politics. But there is something around clarity. And I think certainly one of the difficulties I think we've faced in the UK, and it is about politics, is that people haven't spoken clearly. We've had endless metaphors being used to sort of describe situations which have gone on for so long that you're confused at the end of it as to whether it's a train you're getting on, whether floodgates have opened, you know, whatever the term is that's used. So I'd like to think that in 2021, leaders are a lot clearer in their messaging. You know, a lot, they think about who they're speaking to, the community that they're talking to, and try and stop, you know, promising things that they can't deliver, and being really clear about what is happening or what they don't know or they don't understand. You know, just opening up and being honest and saying, I haven't got a clue what's happening here, but I'm in a leadership role, so I'm going to try and do my best to provide you with as much information as I can when I can. That sort of stuff.
Perfect example of what I meant there. Be clear when you're not clear.
Yeah, exactly. But somehow that seems to be anathema in politics.
Yes.
Never hear a politician say, they go through media training and they will never say either no, because then they can, cut that out and it'll be a snippet, whatever, or look, I don't know, but I'm trying to find out for you. Why can't they say that?
I don't think people want politicians to say that. It's a bit like the good parent, isn't it? They want them to know. I think that is if you're a politician.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think one of the things to extend the compassion, I just in the positions that I've been in the last year, I have screwed up so many times. And, my intention has always been to do the right thing, however I define that. And so I'm trying to find an alternative to how I think about my own leaders and to extend compassion in my small circle of interaction. Because I do believe that people are trying their best.
Yeah.
And that is there corruption? Yes, but I think oftentimes corruption is rooted in fear and insecurity. And so I have compassion for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary. It's scary, right? To be in those roles.
Mm. And yeah, it is true to your point and to Anne's point. It is true that people, I think there's a tendency to think that, okay, well, hang on a minute, we're paying you to be a prime minister or a secretary of health or whatever. We're paying you to know. So why can't you know? But the real difficulty that everybody has right now is to accept that we're in a position where we simply don't know. And all we can use is our best guidance and our best advice and our willingness to get it right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we took the sort of conversations we have with our clients in leadership roles, and we talk about interdependence and we talk about collaboration, then you would expect all of the scientists, and they probably are, across the world, all talking to each other, all sharing data, all sharing research information, sharing budgets even, and seeing this as a global issue. You would expect political leaders in all the countries around the world, in an ideal world, to all be sharing their resources, their knowledge, their views, their concerns. But we still get back to this sort of reptilian response of, oh, we got the vaccine first, or, we've spent more money than you have, or we've got something, we've got 10 million doses and you've only got 5. I mean, it very quickly slips back. And I wonder sometimes whether that's because that's our fault, whether the very people that politicians represent are actually the root cause of all of this, that we expect them to be better than anyone else. We have a sort of, there's an element of us that thinks, well, yeah, we have got the best democracy, or we have got the best system of government, or we have got the best political leaders. And therefore, what can we expect if they behave like, if they behave in our interest rather than in a wider interest? I mean, I think there's a big dilemma between what we individuals want out of a politician and then what we talk about in terms of leadership when we get into groups like this.
Yeah. But of course, leadership does mean going first. So it would be nice to break that circle of the public getting what they deserve kind of thing. And I think that's also where I was heading with my comment earlier as well. So, yeah.
Well, look, we've been chatting for about 45 minutes and it's been great. And it's been super to see you all. One of the things that Britt, Ian and I wanted to do was to, first of all, thank you and also thank everyone else. There's been hundreds of people that have been involved in this little venture that we started back in whenever it was, April, May time, called Let's Talk Leadership. It's been tremendous, and it's been wonderful that people have just stepped forward and said, I'd love to have a conversation, or I'd love to join in, or I'd love to coach someone. So we'd like just to say a very, very big thank you to all of you and to everyone who's been involved. It's been great. We've got ambitions for 2021. We're still not where we want to be. We want to have a lot more coachees. So we want a lot more young people that we can coach, because in the global network we're part of, we've got wonderful people, and we're looking at some of them on the screen now, but wonderful people who have offered to coach you know, and to provide all of their experience and to do it completely free of charge. So, you know, we're hoping that, I think I'm going to ask Ian and Britt to say, but for me in 2021, I'd like to have about 10 or 15 young leaders around the world that we're coaching. I'd like to have conversations like this every week that lots of people are joining in. And I'd like to think that based on what we've just been talking about, there are a few young people around the world who get given the chance to actually have a go at running things, because I think they'd make a better show of it than my crowd, my generation anyway, have been able to do. So Britt, Ian, any thoughts that you got about, you know, where this goes from here with Let's Talk Leadership?
Ian?
I'm just inspired, like I said before, Matthew, and thank you to you as well for you know, for facilitating much of this, and the people behind the scenes that we don't often see on these live calls. Certainly people like Richard who are behind the scenes. But no, thank you to all the people that we've had, and I've been so pleased with the willingness of people to come on and either do live sessions like us today or do some of these recordings. But I'm so looking forward next year to hearing back some of the journeys that these young leaders are taking with the coaching support they've had. And because that in itself will inspire more people to follow. So no, I'm just eternally grateful for the support we've had, and how much I've learned through this process too. It's been great to work with both of you a lot more as well, albeit virtually.
Yeah, same here. I'm so grateful for all the connections that we've had, and the wonderful conversations, and all the wisdom and the kindness and the goodwill that has come out of it. So very, very, very pleased. I think it was Richard who gave the very first kick up the backside to you, Matthew.
Yeah.
And then you started it, and you look where we are. And yes, let's have as an aim for next year that we support more young leaders, and we've started doing that, and we can just continue.
Yeah. So we join again together on the 8th of January. We've got Ella Ballington joining us again, who's one of the original young leaders that we spoke to right at the beginning when we started this. We've got a human rights lawyer joining us that Geneva put us in touch with. And we've got some further young leaders. We're actually going to a school in North London in the new year, and we're going to put students who are in their sixth form year in touch with their local mayor in North London, who's just been elected, and we're going to get a conversation going about local leadership. They are also connected to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, so whether we can get some from Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as well, that would be great. But that's one of the
Tim.
Yeah. And Tim, we have you at some point next year on digital transformation, don't we?
Yes, and I'm wondering if we could also get Nick Petrie along, because he's working on artificial intelligence and coaching, and I was just in contact with him this morning and giving it a go as well, finding out how much of a vertical leader I am with the help of AI. And so I think if that would be a really good idea if we can get him along. If he's in New Zealand, somebody's going to have to be very early or very late, but we have to see.
No problem. We can flex. We just want as many people, you know, getting involved as we possibly can, and just see where it goes. Who knows? And it's great because we started with nothing. I think Richard will tell us we've probably got about 70 people following us on YouTube now. We've got about 520 followers, which is tiddly squat, I know, in the scheme of things. But actually, when you look at the people who are connecting with us, they're all shapes and sizes, colors, races, genders, you name it. They're everywhere, which is great. So yeah, 2021, here we come. So it's lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for joining.
Likewise.
And however you celebrate the festive season, have a great time.
Thank you so much.
See you in 2021.
Happy holidays, as we say in an inclusive way.
Cheers.
Congratulations, you guys.
Congratulations. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Yeah.